all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we are super happy to have you here, and we just ask that you bring an open mind and heart to your listening experience and to be prepared to explore vantage points that I'm convinced will help shift or solidify your current understanding of the ultimate nature of reality. While listening, you'll be exposed to inspiring, empowering, and unifying perspectives that I'm highly confident will yield stellar results in your life if you opt to try them on for size. Also, at optimistic.tv, we have officially begun releasing the first few episodes of our new late-night style, consciousness-elevating video variety talk show, Optimistic, which features live visionary art, soul share interviews, retreat guests here at the Mystic Manor, as well as live musical performances. I'm also super excited to announce that we are currently making plans to release the rest of Season 1 on my personal favorite online streaming service. So stay tuned to optimistic.tv to follow the unfolding development of this exciting Optimistic expansion, as we'll be posting more info and release dates there soon. And in the meantime, be sure to check out, of course, the first few episodes at optimistic.tv as well. All right, all you positive heads. On this week's Soul Share episode, I'm very excited to have Janelle, Christa here with me on the show. Janelle is an author, Hollywood coach, and producer who not only coaches celebrity clients, she also coaches people from all walks of life that are seeking to bring more fulfillment into their lives. Super excited to have you here, Janelle. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Yes. Let's dive in and start at the very predictable starting place. I always like to begin these soul shares, and it is with this question. You're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You have 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
My passion is human potential, human consciousness, and growth and challenge. I love to go deep, ask hard questions. I love to offend people a little bit. I'm a contrarian by nature. And so I look at paradigms, all the modern paradigms, consensus paradigms, and question them and go deep into them and ask people to do the same.
And here I thought your answer was going to be crossword puzzles, but okay, fair enough. I love it. All right. So why don't you do this if you would? I always like to give the listeners and myself just a little context and what's your backstory? How did you get here? How did you get on this path of helping people to take the red pill, if you will?
Right. So probably like many people that are in healing fields, I had experienced a tremendous amount of trauma, and the Western medical system was not helping. I was diagnosed with bipolar, and I was medicated throughout my adolescence and my early adulthood. And I was in a lot of physical pain. I was experiencing tremendous health problems. Nothing was really helping. And so I started this journey within myself into a spiritual world and spiritual realm, which started to awaken me into the higher purpose of why all these things were happening. And I started taking a really, really deep dive into that, really to heal all this trauma so I could quit reinventing it again and again and again in my life and living in this purgatory realm. So with that, after years, began working with other people to help them do the same, to hopefully give them some hacks to make it a little less painful, a little more fun, and a lot faster.
Nice. Very, very nice. So you have recently wrote a book and have a new one on the way from what you mentioned before we turned on the microphone. So why don't we do that? Why don't we go down the spiritual ninja, I love the name of your book, rabbit hole. Tell us a little bit about being a spiritual ninja.
Yeah. Sure. So in my opinion, a spiritual ninja is a magical, badass, no fluff soldier in the army of love.
Ooh,
I think that here on this planet, we do live in this realm of beauty and pain, of darkness and light, and I really wanted to create a movement that was based on this army of love that we can, rather than resist and fight, we can come together and unite. So I wanted to create this book that was really, really foundational for anybody that was new, or maybe some experienced healers that were having a hard time staying grounded after sessions, or feeling drained after working with people. So I tried to create it so it was for anybody in all walks of life. And so the quote unquote, woo woo spiritual people could give it to their family and friends and be like, see, this is not
right.
that woo woo. And so Spiritual Ninja is a guidebook for energetic protection and connection in the
Hmm.
modern world. I think that we have so much information and so much craziness coming at us at all the time in the modern world, especially with the internet and social media. So I wanted to take these old kind of esoteric ideas of energetic attacks, or commingling of energies, and explain it in a way that people could get and apply it to the modern world. So it's a really foundational book that, explains chakras as energy centers or power centers. If you don't really believe in chakras, you can say, okay, well, even if I don't believe in a chakra, I know I get power from my intuition, or from my expression, or from my love, or from masculine, feminine energies. I can get that and comprehend that without having to be super woo woo, and I can apply that to my life. So that was really the point of Spiritual Ninja, is kind of this gateway drug into this more mystical, esoteric world, if you will.
Right, right. Yeah, it's I think it's so crucial to be able to bridge, the woo woo with the 3D reality we were all, born and raised into.
Right.
And it's so many people, I think, can go very far off the woo woo bridge, and
Mhm.
that's beautiful and fun and interesting and exciting. And I love to hear about people, having experience with extraterrestrials or channeling or whatever. I think it's fascinating, and it can blow a lot of people out, right? It's like,
Totally.
and so I think it's really important to be able to sort of have one foot in this world and one foot in that, to be that bridge, and not get too lost in the ethers, if you will, because
Yeah.
we came here to be in physicality, right, and not
Right.
just float off into the ethers.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to, when I first started getting into spirituality, I remember I felt almost offended if someone was like, "You're grounded," which seems so
Right.
bizarre now, but it was like, "No, I'm not. I don't want to, I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
like, I'm like this ascended being. Like, I don't want to be
Right.
grounded to this planet." And it's like,
Right.
no, actually, that is like the most powerful thing we can do, is to get really, really grounded into ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree, and I think it's sort of a rite of passage for a lot of people, especially when they first, start having an awakening, if you will. It can be,
Yeah.
people sort of go completely. The pendulum swings really far one direction, and then it's like,
Mhm.
okay, let's bring it back down to earth. And when you start understanding that is sort of the ebbs and flows of a lot of these experiences too, where you
Yeah.
can have these really heightened expansive states and experiences, and then it kind of like, okay, then there's sort of like it's like a contraction, and
Right.
it's like,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think
And
that's
a balance.
important to, yeah, and to understand how all of this stuff, it's like so much in life. It's like, two steps forward, one step back, in a sense, right?
Totally. Yeah, totally. And I mean, I definitely still go there. Like when quarantine first happened, I I did have a moment of, oh my gosh, it's all happening. Everything I thought would always happen. The world is ending. It's all prophetic and all these things. And I went into that magical thinking for a bit, and it was really
Mm-hmm.
fun. It was really, really
Right.
fun. I got to play with that. And then I got to come back down to earth and go get the groceries and do the laundry and things like that. So
You mean you're not a breatharian and you just, jeez, so much less woke than me. Um,
It's true.
the other thing too that I didn't speak to that I thought when you were talking about your backstory a little bit, it's like the number of people that also find their way to their own awakening and expanded consciousness through some sort of a mental or psychotic break. It's like
Yeah.
it seems like it's something that is such a common path. So I think of that, for anyone who's out there listening, who a lot of people will find the show even just from searching the word positive because it comes up, and it's like people are having a really tough time and they haven't even necessarily went down this rabbit hole completely yet, and it's like. And they think, oh my gosh, I'm losing my mind, or whatever. I'm completely depressed, and it's like, to me, I think it offers. It's something that can really offer great comfort when you start to understand how common of a path that is for people. And it's so anyone out there listening who's sort of just early on this journey, welcome to the club. It gets better.
Yeah. Have you seen that meme? I love it. I want to have a poster of it in my house because it has a picture of this lady meditating all happy outside in the sunshine. And it says what people think awakening looks like. And then right beneath it, there's this picture of this horror film and this woman crying like Blair Witch Project. And it's like what spiritual awakening actually looks like. I'm like, yes.
Holy. Yeah, I mean, I have. It's hilarious, and it's just like it's so true. Though it's like when we attribute love and light and rainbows and unicorns, and yes, there is some of that stuff. There's a lot of that, and that's beautiful. And first you got to take out the trash, and there's a lot of trash. There's a lot of fragmentation, and I believe lifetimes. Personally, for what my perspective is lifetimes for a lot of people to get to these expanded states where they're really understanding and seeing the broader picture and the oneness of all things, and all and how it's all sort of you reflecting you back to you. It's I don't think that is a process that just happens quickly in a soul's evolution,
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's that onion that you continue to peel back layers and layers and layers, and it's not linear and it's confusing and it's multidimensional because we're multidimensional. So I
Right.
think that's what makes it more fun too, when you're on the outside and looking in and going, oh, I want to go back there.
Right. Right. Well, one of the things I know with Spiritual Ninja you talk about is how to take your power back from people and institutions. And, a lot of people feel very disempowered in the world today. I mean, especially now where they're being told, here, stay at home, you can't leave. And if you do, wear this mask. And, it's one of those things where, I think people are feeling more disempowered than ever. And what is your take on how people can sort of navigate that feeling and find, an empowered state?
I think the most empowering state that we can come from is really choosing to embody choice as our greatest superpower. I think that choice, whether you want to call it free will or choice or whatnot, is our absolute greatest gift that we have, because Viktor Frankl, for those who don't know, he was a 4-time Holocaust survivor. He went through 4
Yes, he's amazing.
concentration camps. Yeah, and he has this quote in one of his books where he says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is I don't remember the exact quote, but basically your opportunity to choose how you respond. And that will determine your freedom. And I really try to live my life with that because honestly, that is the one thing we can fall back on. And it's the
Right.
one thing about humans that make humans so beautiful. I mean, if you want to look from an extraterrestrial perspective, the hope that human beings have is amazing. I mean, it is absolutely amazing when you tap into that universe that is hope. It's tremendous and it's transformative, and you can grow so much from there. So when you look at how am I going to choose to respond to this, and I'm human, I go back and forth. I get kind of pissed off every time I have to put on a mask to go into a store, and
Right.
I get irritated with all of the craziness and the tyranny, and but I get to choose how I respond to it, and that's really where our power comes from. And I think also recognize, this what's happening right now on a large scale, I believe, is that space. I feel like we've had a tremendous amount of stimulus that has gone on, and it got to a point of absolute chaos, and which is great because you need chaos to breed something new. And now we're in that space between stimulus and response. And we get to really choose how we're going to respond moving forward. There's been so many gifts that have come out of this, and there's been so much awareness to just insane darkness that has been happening that we're now having the time to be able to witness and see. So, how do we choose as a collective to move forward? That starts as how we choose to move forward as an individual, and what we choose to recognize and see in the world, and how we choose to make changes in our individual lives, and that will absolutely uh, reflect outward into the world and ripple into the world. So how do we get our power back from institutions? Well, we recognize when we've given it away. We recognize when we've been living in an illusion of choice and it's not really there. And so we can recognize that and make the changes. And so I think right now we're in this really beautiful and miraculous state. And it is really ugly, and we are not all in the same boat. We're in the same storm globally, but we're all in different boats, and that's being exposed on a greater level. So I am filled with hope in all of this, and I hope that people listening can recognize that they have those same raw tools inside of them of choice and emotion and hope, and finding the beauty of the bigger picture here.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you said it well. It's not really what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And that is where your freedom lies. Everyone's, at the end of the day, that is the space, I believe, where you have freedom. And, Charles Bukowski said, what matters most is how well you walk through the fire. And,
Yeah.
when you get to the other side, I believe it's like, okay, how did you react? How graceful were you in using, instead of viewing these things as something that can completely disempower you, saying, okay, and taking on the perspective of like, okay, all of this madness is happening so that I can have the opportunity to work through it and rise above it. Because how can humanity have the experience of, overcoming, evil in a sense, ultimately, and evolving into the greatest and grandest expression of ourselves possible if there isn't something to overcome?
Yeah.
And so once you start taking on that perspective, it's really an empowering way to look at all these, malevolent forces, if you will, that we
Right.
can see. It's like, okay, these characters and these institutions and these, the powers that be that, are we just can't understand as beings who really want to, the best possible for not only ourselves but everyone, and view everything as connected and an extension of the one. Without someone playing those roles, we can't really have the experience of overcoming. And so, it's, to me, that's extremely empowering to take on that perspective, as opposed to, oh my gosh, I'm, subjected to this madness.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. And I think also, really envisioning where you want to go, and really
Hmm.
as a globe, us visioning where we want to go, going to your fire analogy, I had an experience where I did a fire walk, and it was like 8 feet of burning hot coals. And you go into a trance before, and you have this vision of seeing yourself on the other side and what that's going to feel like. And you go through that and you embody that. And I remember as I was walking on the fire, it was just the most amazing experience I'd ever had. It was definitely one of the peak moments of my life. And I'm walking on this fire, and all of a sudden I came out of that vision, and I was like, holy shit, I'm walking a fire. And I looked down,
Mm.
which is totally against the rules. You're not supposed to look down. And all of a sudden I burned my feet. I'm like, okay, this is
Mm.
real. And then I looked back up and I kept walking forward, and I didn't burn my feet anymore. I just went right back into that state. And in a way it was like, wow, this is real because we make it real. And if we have a vision of where we want to go, we can get there. And it doesn't matter if you're walking on fire or if you're going through the coronavirus or whatever, it's like you can overcome if you create that and you desire it and you imagine it. We create our reality. So what kind of reality do we want to create?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. I love that. It's really interesting to acknowledge like, oh, it wasn't affecting me until all of a sudden I came back down to earth, and like, oh my gosh, you start getting in your head about it, and then
Yeah.
it totally changes the experience.
Yeah, completely. And how quick you can go back to what you want if you really
Right.
make that choice, or I could
Right.
have just been like, oh my God, my feet are burning, and walked out of the fire.
Right. 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 Yeah. Totally. Totally. So, one of the things that comes up a lot in all of this, and I know you talk about it in your book as well, is this idea of being an empath and how it sort of makes one vulnerable, and protecting yourself as from things that would sort of do harm or that you're overly sensitive to as an empath. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that, because I know there's a
Yeah.
lot of people who are, speaking of having their own awakening, that is, I think, something, personally, I think we're all empathic to various natures, to various degrees. And then as you have your awakening, it's sort of like the sensitivity certainly can crank up.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. When I was a kid, my family used to call me Sponge because I picked up on everything. So that was my nickname. And and I always thought it was just a curse. I mean, my mom would always say, "Oh, you're too sensitive. Oh, you're too sensitive." And, and
What a funny concept, right? And to feed to someone, you're
right,
too sensitive. Like, this is a
exactly.
problem.
Exactly. And so I think I still have to overcome that because it was just this message that was fed to me so much. And it's like, I have to remind myself, no, that is a gift. But the truth is that it can be a curse if you don't really know how to
Right.
uh, harness it and master it, because you can, I mean, I'm sure there's lots of people that are super, super sensitive like me. I mean, I can be around certain people, and if they're feeling sick, maybe they don't even know they're feeling sick or they have something coming on, I'll feel it.
Right.
Or if they have some unresolved emotions or shame or different things that are coming up, I'll feel it. And I thought it was me. I always thought it was me. And it can get really, really confusing as an empath of what's yours and what's theirs, because a lot of the times as an empath, we do have this sense that there might be what's wrong with me because I'm picking up on everything. And
Right.
so really, really learning how to hold boundaries is probably one of the biggest things that we can learn to do. And I think
Mm.
really, really, really learning how to work with our own energy field, I think, is really where it starts. And going back to, we were talking about chakras a bit earlier. If you can work with the chakra centers and and even if people don't believe in chakras, which probably, listening to this show, they are at least interested in the concept. But if you
Sure.
can look at these energy centers in your body, And you can work with balancing them. You can work with all the different emotions that run through them and that get clogged up in them. You can create a super strong force field around you that no one can really touch and no one can bypass. And so it makes it a lot easier for you to know what's what in regards to, you know, holding a boundary
Mm.
and feeling solid within yourself. Um, I think right now there's so much chaos happening in the world that it can be confusing for everybody around what's mine and what's yours. And we have, especially with social media and all the fighting that's going on in Facebook and, you know, this digital war that's happening, it can get really, really overwhelming for those of us that are sensitive. So I think it goes, you know, a few things with that is like basic tech hygiene of knowing when to turn it off and how to clear yourself of that. Um, uh, in my book, I actually give out a freebie that comes with it, which is a meditation on how to clear you know, what I call a psychic attack, which is just an energetic attack that we can experience. And it can be anywhere from an internet troll that goes off on you, or you're driving down the road and someone flips you off, or maybe, you know, like what happened to me on the trail the other day. I was walking and a woman got really angry because my 3-year-old son got too close to her and she was practicing social distancing and
Oh,
and
wow.
and so you can feel those attacks coming at you. And so it's really, really important to be able to know how to clear those. And I think, you know, one of the easiest ways you can do that is to just go into meditation, close your eyes, imagine a bubble around you, and just wait for a moment and notice any energetic cords or hooks or attachments that have gone into somebody else or that have been plugged into you, and just imagine cutting those. Um, I wish that I had known that as a kid. I wish that I knew that as a, you know, customer service agent in my early teens when I was working at Subway of, you know, how to just on an energetic level be able to go in and clear this in a really simple way. And so for any empath, I think that that's vital to every day, start your day and end your day in a little meditation where you just go through and you imagine cutting any cords into your energy
Mm.
field. And you'll notice a substantial difference. I mean, it's shocking. It's really, really shocking how easy that meditation is and how different you will feel after doing it. So that's just one little hack that I kind of talk about in Spiritual Ninja on energetic attacks and how to work with them.
What a great piece of advice, I think, for, you know, people who, I'm sure there's some light bulbs going on out there like, oh, hold on, it's that simple, you know, to actually protect my energetic field and you know, keep what's mine and what is others, because especially as we get, you know, we can be pretty sticky as we get more and more open. And so I think it's a wonderful piece of very simple advice, you know, visualization and meditation, you know, and for that purpose is it's very practical, right? And
Super
like you said,
practical.
you will see and feel the differences doing that. So I'm sure there will be people that report back how grateful they are to have that little hack. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, it's an easy one. I mean, learning boundaries can take years, and so I mean, it really can really take years to really learn how to harness your boundaries. And so that is just the fastest hack that I've found to work on an energetic level in a really fast way.
Yeah, totally. Well, you also, I know in the book you talk about calling on, I love how you put it, your unseen friends. Let's talk about unseen friends, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely. So in Spiritual Ninja, as I talked about, it's really the gateway drug into the world of the unseen. So in Spiritual Ninja, I keep your unseen friends pretty real life, or as non-woo-woo, I guess, as possible.
As an unseen friend can be.
Right. So in Spiritual Ninja, I don't get into spirit guides or angels or anything like that. I'll save that for later once you're hooked. But in Spiritual Ninja, I really talk about these aspects of yourself that I know through my spiritual work are still very much alive, because I know that reality is multidimensional and that there's no such thing as time and space, and it's all happening simultaneously. So I know that these aspects of ourself are still very, very alive. But even for those of us that, haven't tripped out on mushrooms or gone into, quantum healing hypnosis therapy sessions, you know, it will make sense to them. So I talk about in Spiritual Ninja the magical child self, and that's the part of us that was the pre-wounded child, the child that sees the lava on the floors, sees the fairies in the trees, sees the auras around people, that really knows that they create this reality that they're in, and that is where so much of our power comes from, because that's where our imagination comes from, that's where our enchantment comes from. And by learning to tap into this aspect of ourself and call upon that guide in ourself, we can create so many amazing things. I mean, it's unbelievable when you really start to develop a relationship with the magical child self. And so that works for people, whether they're spiritual or not, because that concept makes sense. That I remember when I was younger, and I remember being able to, imagine these things and play pretend and do all of this. And so I can work with that on an energetic level. So that's one of the unseen friends that I talk about in the book. A couple of the other unseen friends are the child, which is the wounded child, and the adolescent. And those are not necessarily unseen friends you want to call upon to help you, but they are so involved in our day-to-day lives, where they come up. If you're not paying attention to them, they will come up in your reality, and they will take over, and they will start to run the show. And so it's really, really important, I believe, to know how to be aware of these aspects of ourselves. And so we can then go into meditation and work with them and kind of bring them back into their reality by giving them whatever they need. And so we can be more conscious in our reality. So those are three of the unseen friends I talk about. And then I kind of get a little bit more mystical by talking about the higher self and the future self, as well as a masculine and feminine self. And I still try to, in Spiritual Ninja, at least keep it pretty practical, in the sense that you can imagine a higher self as this potential being that is all-knowing. And your future self you can work with, which is both the positive future and the more limited future. And so you can call upon their insight. And I do that with my work with kids. Like, say they're scared of something. And it's like, okay, so close your eyes. Now imagine going into your future. Now, can you imagine the future where you've done that and you've accomplished it? And what do you feel like? Okay, now go into your future where you were too afraid to move forward and you haven't gone through and you haven't done it. And how does that feel? And so you can call upon their hindsight. And so that way, it's starting to introduce this idea to people around multidimensionality and how we are so multidimensional, and how these different aspects of ourselves influence us and impact us in so many ways. So that's as deep as I go in Spiritual Ninja. As people go deeper into work with me, we get into all different aspects of ourselves, and to the point I probably sound like I'm got multiple personality disorder, but I'm gonna take it.
You and everyone else.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I love that. I always say, literally most episodes I end up quoting at some point my favorite Bible verse. I don't quote the Bible often, but when I do, I always quote, "Lest you become like a child, you can't enter the kingdom of heaven." And yeah, I think that's such a powerful perspective. And I absolutely love how your unseen friends are actually referencing these other yous, because
Yeah.
that's something that is talk about grounding spirituality. That is something that is so absolutely relatable to everyone. We can
Yeah.
all relate and connect with our magical child self, our wounded child self, our adolescent self. We can imagine what our future self would feel like, and once you start applying the perspective that, like, as Einstein proved, time is relative, and you start really wrapping your mind around that, ultimate truth, it's then like, okay, well, this future self exists in
Yeah.
another now, right? And so I
Right.
think that is such a grounded, powerful perspective and way to sort of dip your toes into expanding your multidimensionality.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I hope so. I hope that, I've seen it help so many people that I've worked with, and it's definitely helped me and my children in the way that I'm working to raise them. So I wanted to get it out there in the book. I created a course, but I was like, well, let's start with a book. A book is a great way. It's inexpensive for people, and it's practical, and it's, something they can do on their own time. So yeah, I think if more and more people, if this is something we were taught in school, we'd live in a different world.
Yeah, absolutely. And perhaps it will be something that is taught in the schools of the future. Now that
Yes.
now that there is no school and we're redefining it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, are there any other, you've had some great pieces of advice, very practical with, envisioning the bubble and, tapping into your unseen friends. Is there any other sort of spiritual hacks or hygiene practices that that are quick and easy that you would recommend?
Yeah. So, probably the thing that I'm most passionate about and probably the most popular because of is my healing modality system, which is called the Harmony Keys,
Hmm.
uh, which is a system which really works with teaching people to identify emotions, unresolved emotions that are stuffed into the energy field and into our energy centers. And uh, what's different about this system that I haven't actually seen anywhere else, this really came to me through some channeling, uh, was that we stuff emotions into our bodies, but we don't just stuff these quote unquote negative or limiting emotions. We also stuff positive emotions. Um, and I haven't really seen anybody ever talk about that, and I feel like it's really important that we do talk about it, because I really feel, and I've seen, that when we stuff the expansive emotions inside of us, that's what's more detrimental to our health than when we stuff depression or something inside of us.
Interesting.
Yeah, because what I found is that when we stuff positive emotions inside of us, which, by the way, I should rephrase this. I believe all emotions are positive, every single one
Mm,
of them, whether it's shame or
yeah,
depression,
agreed.
anger, rage, whatever. They're all positive. They're just feedback. It's really, really neutral more than it is even positive. They're just neutral feedback. It's a language trying to speak to us, and they only become negative when we repress them or when we don't resolve them and they get stuffed inside of us. And that goes for positive, expansive emotions as well, like gratitude, joy, forgiveness. And we stuff those inside of us just as much, if not more, as we do the uncomfortable emotions. So let me give you an example. Um, when I was younger, I uh, when I was about 22 years old, I decided I was going to get breast implants. And on a physical level, I was stuffing my beauty inside of me. My innate, I was taking this paradigm around what beauty is supposed to mean in the collective consciousness, and putting those toxic emotions inside of me. And it's interesting because breast implants are literally toxic. They have neurotoxins and carcinogens in them, such as heavy metals and formaldehydes and preservatives and all sorts of junk. So those are really, really toxic things. But they also stem from a toxic mindset. So I've put these toxic bags of silicone inside of my body. But what I was really doing was I was stuffing my beauty inside of me.
Wow.
And that is what really made me ill. That is what made me ill. That's what made me sick. I stuffed my beauty, my sexiness, like any of these things inside of me. And it took me a really long time. It took me 8 years before I figured it out. And it was like it was funny because I mean, it's funny now, but I was working as a healer and I was, super popular for helping people find emotion stuffed in their bodies. And
Right.
and
Teach best what we most need to learn, right?
right. And it was like finally I realized, oh my God, this is what's making me so sick. So by getting these implants removed, I was able to then release these beautiful emotions that I'd stuffed inside of me. And I was able to heal those. That's a big story, but we do this too. Say that you have a partner and they never do the dishes. And finally one day they surprise you and they do the dishes and you feel really grateful for it. But you don't want to express that gratitude because you feel like they're going to then just feel like they are off the hook and not have to do the dishes anymore. And so you don't say thank you. And so you put that gratitude inside of you. And now you've taken this really expansive emotion and you've put it inside of you and you've covered it up with entitlement or anger or resentment or whatever. And then it becomes much harder to access this gratitude. And this goes even deeper when you go into forgiveness. I will never forgive that person. That is the most powerful thing. It's not even an emotion, really. It's a state of being, is forgiveness. But if we make that choice, I'm never going to forgive this person, we're stuffing that inside of us. And what is that doing to us? That is going to keep us in hell.
Right.
So I created the system that really teaches people on a very practical level how to test for emotions and how to find what age they were stuffed. And if you go really deep into the system, you can find, what lifetime it was stuffed, or maybe it was, something that was inherited from your mother or your father, and it's gone through your lineage, and you're working to heal. So it's that the Harmony Keys is really a system it breaks down the emotions into positive emotions, expansive emotions, imprisoning emotions, transitional emotions, and paralytic emotions. And by gathering this information, you can understand the story behind it. And so you can really work to heal it on a root level rather than, talking about it in therapy or, going through it over and over and over in Reiki sessions, but not really understanding the context behind what you're trying to heal. And so you keep recreating it. So that's the Harmony Keys. But on a, something someone can take away right now from this is really every single day at the end of the day, making it part of your spiritual hygiene practice. When you're cutting your cords, you also can go through and just in a few moments, close your eyes, go throughout your day, go through any big emotions that you had. Notice if you felt yourself in that day, stuff any inside of you, and allow yourself to just feel that and allow it to expand in your body and allow it to be released. And you can release it, most of the time when you just by recognizing and acknowledging it's there, your body will just naturally start to release it because you've acknowledged it. But you can release it through yawning, through breathing, through running your hand, because your hand is a magnet, and doing some energy work over your crown chakra by releasing it, just running your hand over that spiritual center. There's lots of different ways you can release it. You can jump up and down, you can shake. All animals shake when we have trauma, and we don't, we stuff it.
Right.
So there's lots of different ways you can do that. But I believe really by working with your emotions and stuffed emotions, both the expansive and the imprisoning ones, you can access this level of freedom unlike any other, really.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. That's such a powerful perspective to explore. This idea of unresolved positive emotions. You're right. I haven't ever heard that spoken to before, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It's been amazing to witness because in all the different sessions that I've worked with people. And now I just teach other people to use this system on themselves or others. But it's been the most miraculous thing when you go through it and you find, oh, the anger, the rage, the shame, the pain, the sorrow, the suffering, and then underneath that you get to the love, and it's like,
Yeah.
whoa, wow, and you can experience the shift instantly. It's amazing. The people that after they would leave the sessions, their eyes looked clearer. They literally said they could see things better on a physical level. It's just
Wow.
amazing. And we know through science and our measuring devices, we can actually look at emotions and on a chemical level and how they work and what happens when they start to get stuck, and what happens when on a DNA level when we have these more expansive emotions. The DNA literally like recoils and expands. So it's pretty amazing stuff.
Incredible. Very, very cool. Well, let's get a little more woo-woo. This has been
Okay.
some great grounded advice. It's really, really practical. And you mentioned channeling, and you have a new book that's coming out. You had mentioned too before we started recording. And did I hear correctly that that's actually going to be a channeled text?
So the book is not a channel text.
Okay.
The system is. I
Got
have
it.
tons of channeled writing, but I haven't published any of it yet. But the system is a channeled system. It's really, the book is pretty practical for people, trying to make sense of all of this. Which for whatever reason I feel very called to reach a new audience, I guess, that maybe is not as open, that is interested. So the book is not channeled, but the system itself is channeled. I don't even actually talk about that in the book, though.
Gotcha.
But yeah, the system is channeled. So all the different emotions that are placed in the different categories, how they are on, because it's placed on wheels on a chart, how the exact that are based on the resonance of the different emotions. All of that is channeled material.
Gotcha. With channeling, it's really interesting to me because what I'm noticing is more and more people seem to be having channeling experiences or feeling like they're having channeling experiences where they're accessing something. And I guess these are it's all relative, right? Because from one perspective, I like to refer to it as relative truths. From one perspective, you and I are separate. We can agree to that. And from another, you and I are one, right? We would probably both agree to that as well. It's relative truths based on the vantage point from which we're speaking, right? And so channeling sort of falls into that. It's like, okay, from one perspective, it's all you. So it's your higher self or some extended version of you that is coming through. And from another, it's this, other quote unquote, being that's coming through that. So it's an interesting phenomenon that I'm noticing, more and more people seem to be having. And what I love about channeled experiences. First off, I think it was Mozart or Beethoven or one of those guys is like, look, I don't do any of it. It just all comes through me. Yeah. I think all art is channeled. I think, it's all inspired in spirit, inspiration. Right. And so, it's really interesting though to see more and more people feel like they're tapping into this extended version of themselves or this other. And what I love about people who claim to be having a channeling experience is oftentimes what, having bumped up against many people, and an ever growing number of people is the sanity of most of these people, the power of the information that's coming through. I mean, some of my favorite teachers or authors are claiming that it's channeled material. And I always say, look, I'm less concerned with that. That's an interesting thing to talk about and explore. More interesting is what's the information that's coming through. And what I find is, people like Abraham, one of the most powerful teachers, probably my favorite teacher out there, or right now I just got an advanced copy of Paul Selig's Janelle's new book. It's super powerful from what I've looked at so far. He claims it's channeled material. Or Rasha, the book Oneness that I've actually read on the show, supposedly channeled. I view it as the guidebook for ascension. It's so empowering and powerful, the perspectives and information that's shared. So I find that really, really interesting with the phenomenon of channeling, that, it's becoming more common, it seems. And, some of the most powerful information I've come across is supposedly channeled, which certainly leads me to believe this is a very, very real phenomenon. So I'm curious what your experience channeling is like.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was first introduced to channeling when I was 18 years old. I was introduced to Jay-Z Knight, who channels Ramtha. And I remember that it was the first thing that I had heard that ever made sense to me. And I remember going, this is really crazy, because this lady is up there channeling Atlantinian warrior, from Atlantis. Right. And how is this making sense to me? But it really did awaken me to this whole different world. And I got into a channel named Lazarus, who I'm not sure if you've heard of, but I believe that Lazarus is like the most profound channel I've ever experienced in my life.
Lazarus spelled like Lazarus, kind of?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And
got it.
He's been channeling for about 50 years. And
50? 50?
Yeah. And
wow.
He has on their website, Concept Synergy, they have just hundreds of thousands, probably at this point, of hours of channeled material. And it's just mind blowing. So I got really interested in Lazarus in my early 20s. And at a certain point, I started going like, well, I would really like to channel. I wonder how I did that. And I got this book by Oren and Dabin, who are channelers, and they have a little online course on channeling. And I read the book and I did the online course, and I started going into these meditations and doing the practices to learn how to channel. And it was amazing, because how it first came to me was I started having all these visions, and I heard this name, Athena. And I'm like, Athena, okay. I'm like, I guess this is the being that I'm connecting with, Athena. And it was so funny, because I got online and I started doing research, like, who is Athena? What does Athena mean? And I remember just chills running down my spine and just tears, because what happened to me was, it was a very, it was like the guides were trying to prove it to me that it was real and I wasn't making this up in my own head. Because when I started looking up Athena, the first thing I found was that Athena was the other name for Minerva. And Minerva is the name that my grandmother, who is like my whole reason I'm alive today, she calls me. And she's always told me she doesn't really know why she calls me Minerva. It's just my nickname, Minerva. Whoa. And so when I started reading, or when I got that, I was like, oh my God, this is really real. And after that, I just started having just the most insane journeys. And really, channeling is what catapulted me on, like we were talking about earlier, the psychosis of spiritual awakening. I mean, it was really intense and really, really crazy. And there was one period where I just woke up, and all of a sudden, for 3 days straight, I was writing like 250 pages of just all this channeled stuff. And it was unbelievable. And the information that came through was just nothing that I had ever even thought about before. And so it was really, really fascinating to me. Like, wow, this is real. I don't know what any of this means, but this is real. And it's amazing, because now all of that stuff that I channeled all those years ago and all that writing, I'm seeing it happen, which is just so amazing, because a lot of that writing was about this interference in light and how physical reality is created, and how there is an aspect of the collective higher self that didn't really accept that basically separated from itself, and then darkness was created and all these different things. And I'm seeing this now manifest in our world, and seeing all of these things that I channeled about all these years ago, about a spiritual war that was happening, that was, going to become more visible in the real world. And I'm seeing that. And we talked about that earlier with the institutions and the different archetypes that are playing these roles. And it's just so amazing to me. So channeling for me has really changed my life. And then I started channeling for other people. And that was really cool, because like a few years ago in Santa Barbara, a couple of years ago, we had this, in LA too, the Thomas fire, and it really destroyed a lot
right.
of land, and it went for forever. At that point, it was the biggest fire California had seen in history. And after the fire, I remember I did this channeling session with this girl, and the guides were coming through, and they were talking about how the world was going to literally crumble around her, but she was going to be safe. And 2 weeks later, we had this horrible mudslide happen, that took a lot of lives here in Montecito and Santa Barbara, where I live. And it was amazing, because the woman that I had did the channeling for, she lived in Montecito, and both sides of, like, her neighbors, their houses were completely destroyed. And her house, it was like the water didn't even come to the edge. It was just
Wow.
like, wow.
Wow.
So all of these different confirmations, I definitely know that channeling is a very real thing. And it doesn't always make sense. And is definitely something that I'm not typically super public about, because it is such a private thing for me, that it's changed my life and transformed me, and it woke me so much. And I also know that it freaks some people out. And so
Right.
I really want to, create a space. I'm starting to open people up to these concepts and these ideas, and that sometimes does just throw people off completely. I mean, my own mother will not even talk to me about it. She just shuts down completely.
Right. Wow.
So yeah, that's been my experience with channeling.
Well, I have a great, that's a pretty epic story. And, I have a great channeling add-on to that related to the Thomas fire. So, all of, as I mentioned earlier, I believe all inspired art is some form of channeling in music and, visionary, speaking of visionary art. So, I live here at the Mystic Manor, where, it's a communal space, and we film my new late night style talk show, Optimistic. And so the first visionary artist on Optimistic is my dear friend Vajra, Vajra, and he's an epic visionary artist. And actually, him and I got connected through very trippy synchronistic circumstances, and then he became a good friend. And then he ended up, I acquired one of his pieces, and then he ended up sort of not only booking all the visionary artists on the episodes of Optimistic, but also outfitted the whole property with, it's sort of like a gallery of visionary art. And there's a piece here that he, I would say, channeled, that is, it's a guy standing in front of a giant flame. I mean, the whole piece is like a little guy in a giant flame with kind of like a menacing face on it. And he, basically made this painting, came through him, and then he, lo and behold, all of his art got caught in the Thomas fire. And it was one of the few that he saved. And he had a moment when he was pulling all his stuff out where he realized that he was the guy facing a wall of flames, exactly like the piece that now is hanging in the house here at the Mystic Manor.
Wow.
But yeah, so there's this piece here with him, and he's like, oh my gosh, I had the moment where I'm standing there, there's a wall of fire in front of me. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is my painting, and I'm the little guy staring at it. And yeah, almost all of his art got destroyed except for a few key pieces, and that was one of them.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Thank you for sharing that story. That's amazing. That's so amazing. I could visualize that whole thing as it was happening. So amazing. And it's so true.
Yeah, if you check out his website is I believe it's Altar of the Heart. Let me look it up real quick. Yeah, altaroftheheart.com. I'm sure you can find that
I
piece
will.
somewhere on in the gallery if you go into his gallery. But he is absolutely incredible. And yeah, by the way, if you guys want to support visionary artists during these times, that's a great one to support. One of the most heartfelt, incredible humans I know. So yeah, he has some
Oh,
epic art to check out.
amazing.
But
Thank you so much for sharing that. I will
yeah,
definitely.
yeah. I mean, speaking of sharing, I mean, one of the things, of course, I love is stories of synchronicity and serendipity and positive paranormal stories. And I mean, the story you just shared, I would say qualifies. The whole Athena Minerva thing. But
Yeah.
if I don't know if there's any other story that you have up your sleeve that you feel compelled to share as we sort of wind down here. But yeah, stories
God.
are my favorite.
Stories are my favorite too. I'm trying to think of a good one to share. There's so many.
I know, huh?
Um, yeah, I have one that is kind of a favorite. It's a little esoteric. I was working in a session with someone, and when I was doing healing work, and a woman came in, and we were doing some healing work around uh, her best friend who had passed away when she was in high school. And it was pretty amazing because pretty quickly I started getting these downloads from the higher self of this woman that had passed away, or this girl. She was a teenage girl, but I really got immediately. I was talking with her higher self, and her higher self was relaying this message that, "Oh no, I'm here, or I've actually already gone back, and that's really unusual, but to go back so quickly. But I intentionally knew that I wasn't going to accomplish what I needed to accomplish in that lifetime, and so I decided to come back. And I left in an accident, made it quick. I didn't wait around too long on the other side, and I came back, and I'm already living in a totally different life with different circumstances. And I chose a family that I was going to be able to do all the things that I knew that I would be able to do. And I said, I relayed to her. I said, her name is Marguerite, and
Hmm.
I said, they're telling me that she's like 3 years old, and her name is Marguerite. And all of a sudden, this woman just starts like sobbing, and I'm like, what's going on? And she said, "Oh my God, that is my daughter's best friend's name, and she's 3 years
Wow.
old." And she said, and that family is the most incredible family, and that little girl will have the opportunity to do anything that she wants in her life. And she was just sobbing. And
Wow.
to me, that story, because sometimes, like when I was doing the sessions, I would have this my own self-doubt that would come up, and I would just be like, God, this is just weird, is making any sense? And I would be dealing with my own shit as I was relaying these messages.
Sure.
And so it was just so amazing to get that affirmation back, like, wow, no, this is this is a real thing. And whatever that is, it meant something to her. And so I think getting out of that, just trusting those messages, because channeling looks different for everybody. Like I realized when I was channeling, I had channeled before. I'm an actor, so when I was really in the zone, and basketball players talk about that, when you get in that zone, you're channeling your art, you're
Yeah.
channeling state, and trusting that, because that's the greater reality. That's the greater reality. And when we can tap into the cosmic memory of that greater reality, we can live in such an amazing world. We can really, really live in an amazing world. And so I think even if it doesn't make sense, it's like it's just remarkable. One more quick story. Just recently, one of my closest friends was in the process of dying from pancreatic cancer, and
Mm,
we were very, very, very close. Like he's definitely
wow.
one of my spirit guides in life and in death. And um, it was pretty amazing because as he was crossing over those few weeks, we were really psychically connected, and I hadn't talked to him on the phone. I knew that he was starting to cross. He was not really coherent as much. And I had this dream, and that's another way I think that messages come through to us. This dream where he was taking me into his house, and there was a lot of chaos going on, and he kind of shared with me that the cancer had gone to his brain, and he's sorry that he hadn't called me. And the next day, I got a phone call from his wife, and she said, "Yeah, we just learned this morning that the cancer has gone to his brain."
Wow.
It's just like, not having to make sense of these things, but trusting them,
Yeah.
like, I mean, I have so many stories. I could go on forever. Like now that I've started, I'm like remembering all these other ones, but it's just
any story. I never will cut someone off from a good story like this.
I'll just tell one more because it just popped up, which
Cool.
was really sweet. And I think a lot of people can relate to this. A few years ago, I had a dog. I'd had him for like 13 years, and his name was Lincoln. And he was hit by a car and he died, and it was really, really tragic. And that because he was just my buddy, like he was with me through everything, and I was so sad. And the next day, I was driving around with my daughter, and I was just kind of zoning out a little bit because I was just sad. And I noticed that there was this car ahead of us, and it was like we were just following this car. Every single turn that the car made, we had made. And I mentioned that to my daughter, and she looked and she goes, "Oh my God, Mom, look at the license plate." And I looked at the license plate, and it said "Happy Dog" on it.
Aww.
And it was like just the most beautiful kind of synchronistic message of like, oh, okay, it's okay.
Wow.
Everything's okay. But it was funny because it was right in front of my face and I didn't even see it. And it's
Right.
like how many things are right in front of us that we don't even see. And so I think that just paying attention, you start to notice the synchronicities a lot more.
What did you say the dog's name was?
Lincoln.
Lincoln, that's right. Yeah, and then you said he was my buddy. And it's funny because someone staying here at the Mystic Manor just announced the other day that she has a dog who's been staying with someone else. And could she please bring him over? And I'm like, sure. And I didn't know that she had this dog that, someone else had been caretaking for a while. And the dog's name is Buddy. And I've really enjoyed playing with Buddy in the last few days. So it's, yeah.
It's so sweet. We can learn a lot from those little doggies. They're so amazing.
Yes, we certainly can. Certainly can. Yeah. Well, this has been epic, Janelle. You are so amazing. For any of you listeners out there who want to connect with Janelle, Janelle, been gracious enough to put together a little something special for them at positivehead.com/Janelle, JANELLE. We'll forward that over. Tell them a little bit about what you've got going on.
Sure. So you'll be able to get I believe, as we talked about throughout this podcast, that emotions are one of our greatest gateways into healing. And so I put together a little mini course, I guess, and not really a course, but just a little love gift, which is a meditation, a guided meditation on gratitude, and expanding your gratitude and creating gratitude, an exercise for you to work with, a printable journal for you to work with, and a little video that goes over the science of how gratitude really changes the brain. So that's totally available to all of your listeners. And if they want to subscribe to my newsletter at janellechrista.com, I send out lots of different things just based on the energetic weather of the times, maybe some inspiring videos or meditations or worksheets or questionnaires, things to ponder. And as far as social media goes, I have an Instagram account, which is Janelle Christa, and then another one, which is Janelle Christa Productions, which really focuses on all my film production stuff. And I just created a YouTube channel, so that's brand new. I'd love a couple new subscribers because there's not very many because it's brand new. So
right.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Well, I'm sure some people are going to want to check all of that out, and certainly appreciate you offering a little freebie for the pea heads out there listening. This has been so amazing. I do have one final question to ask you, and it is this. In 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life according to Janelle, Christa?
In 60 seconds or less. All right. My daughter actually told me the meaning of life when she was about 8 years old, and I subscribed to it completely. We were driving down the road and she said, "What's the meaning of life?" And I said, "Well, you're going to have to think about that." And so the next day she said, out of nowhere, "I've been thinking about the meaning of life, and I finally have come to the answer." And I said, "Oh, really? Okay. What is it?" And she said, "The meaning of life is to have many different experiences."
Hmm.
And I wholeheartedly 100% agree with that. There's no, she didn't say to have a good life, to have a great life, it's like to have many different experiences. And I really, to this day, I think that she's 100% absolutely right, because many different experiences include good times, bad times, challenging times, great times, awful times. It just means that you have a lot of different experiences, and that is 100% what I am up for, and I believe is the meaning of life.
Right. Very out of the mouth of babes, right?
Exactly.
Oh, well, Janelle, you are such a gift. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your gift. And all of you out there listening, thank you for tuning in your beautiful brainwaves. Until next time, journey well. Love you all so, so much. And if you're feeling the call to come for a week retreat style Mystic Manor immersion, remember to go now and book your time to speak with me directly about stepping into the optimistic vortex at calendly.com/talk with Brandon while there are still spots left. Otherwise, I look forward to co-creating magic with you at the Mystic Manor.